It wasn't the sound of the door opening that scared me. It was the silence after. Because for a split second, everything stopped. And in that silence, I knew. He wasn't supposed to be home yet. That's the thought that hit me first. Not guilt. Not panic. Just that. He wasn't supposed to be home. I remember checking the time earlier that day. I remember planning around it. I remember telling myself I had more than enough time. I was wrong. And by the time I realized it was already too late. It started like any other day. Evan had left for work that morning around 8. Same routine, same goodbye. He kissed me on the forehead, grabbed his keys, and said he'd probably be late. "I've got a meeting after work," he said. I nodded, barely thinking about it. Because at that point, I had already made up my mind. That was the part I tried not to think about later. Not the moment he walked in. Not the look on his face. But the fact that this wasn't an accident. It was a choice. A series of them. Because I could have stopped it at any point. But I didn't. His name was Lucas, and it had started in a way that felt harmless at the time. It always does. We met through mutual friends, saw each other a few times in group settings. At first, it was just conversation. Easy. Light. The kind of interaction that didn't feel like it meant anything. But then it changed. Gradually. Quietly. Messages turned into longer conversations. Conversations turned into something more intentional. And somewhere along the way, I stopped pretending it was nothing. But I didn't stop it either. That day, he came over around noon. I remember hesitating before opening the door. Just for a second. Like something in me was trying to stop what I already knew was wrong. But I ignored it. I opened the door anyway. "Hey," he said, smiling like this was normal. Like this wasn't crossing a line. "Hey," I replied. And just like that, we stepped into something we couldn't walk back from. At first, everything felt controlled. Careful. Like we both understood the situation without saying it out loud. But that didn't last. It never does. Time passed faster than I expected. Too fast. And I stopped checking the clock. That was my second mistake. Because if I had paid attention, maybe I would have realized sooner. Maybe I would have had time. But I didn't. And then it happened. The sound. The door unlocking. At first, my brain didn't even register it. Because it didn't make sense. It didn't fit. Evan wasn't supposed to be home. But then I heard it again. The door opening. And everything inside me dropped. I froze. Completely. Lucas turned toward me, confused. "What's wrong?" he asked. I didn't answer. Because I couldn't. Because in that moment, there was only one thing I could hear. Footsteps, getting closer. And then, he appeared, standing in the doorway. And everything stopped. For a second, no one moved, no one spoke. It was like time paused just long enough for all of us to understand exactly what was happening. Evan looked at me first. Not at Lucas. Not at the situation. At me. And I'll never forget that look. Because it wasn't confusion. It wasn't even anger. It was recognition. Like everything had just clicked into place. Like he had been putting pieces together. And this was the final one. "Evan," I started. But the words felt useless the second they left my mouth. Because there was no explanation for this. No version of this that made sense. Lucas stood up quickly. "This isn't," he began. But Evan held up a hand. Not aggressively. Not suddenly. Just enough to stop him. "Don't," Evan said quietly. And the room went silent again. Because his voice, it wasn't loud. but it carried something heavier than anger. Finality. I felt my chest tighten. "This isn't what it looks like," I said, even though I knew how that sounded. Even though I knew there was no version of this that looked different. Evan let out a small breath, almost like a laugh, but without any humor in it. "Really?" he said. And that one word hit harder than anything else, because it wasn't a question. It was disbelief and disappointment. Lucas shifted uncomfortably. "I should go," he said quietly. Evan didn't respond, didn't even look at him, which somehow made it worse, because it meant Lucas didn't matter. This wasn't about him. It was about me and what I had done. Lucas grabbed his things and left quickly. The door closing behind him sounded louder than anything else in the room, and then it was just us. Silence filled the space between us. Heavy, unavoidable. Evan finally looked away from me, ran a hand through his hair, like he was trying to process something he didn't want to understand. "How long?" he asked. His voice was calm. Too calm. And that scared me more than if he had yelled. "Evan." "How long?" he repeated. There was no avoiding it. "No," I said quickly. "It's not like that." He shook his head slightly. "Don't," he said. That same word again. And this time, it felt like a wall, like I had just run out of chances. "A few weeks," I said quietly. The lie felt thin, weak. Evan looked at me, really looked at me. And I knew he didn't believe it, but he didn't argue, didn't push, which somehow made it worse. "Okay," he said. Just that. And that's when I felt it. Something shift, something break. Because that wasn't acceptance. It wasn't forgiveness. It was the moment he stopped trying to understand. "I can explain." "You don't need to," he said. And just like that, everything I thought I could fix was gone. He didn't yell, didn't throw anything, didn't even raise his voice. He just stepped back. Like he needed distance. Like being near me felt different now. "I forgot something," he said after a moment. The sentence didn't make sense. "What?" I asked. "My meeting," he said. Then he gave a small, almost hollow laugh. "It got canceled." That was it. That was the reason. The one thing I hadn't planned for. The one thing that changed everything. "I was going to surprise you," he added quietly. My chest tightened so hard it almost hurt. Because suddenly, this wasn't just about what I did. It was about what he had been trying to do, and how badly it collided with it. "I came home early," he said, each word landing heavier than the last. "I thought we could have dinner together." I couldn't speak, because there was nothing I could say that would make that better. Nothing that could undo what had just happened. Evan shook his head slightly, not in anger, in disbelief. "I didn't think..." He started, then stopped, like he couldn't even finish the thought. And that's when I realized something I hadn't expected. I would have rather he was angry. Because anger means something is still there. But this felt like nothing. Like he had already checked out. "I'm going to pack a bag," he said finally. My stomach dropped. "Wait, Evan, please." But he was already walking away. Not fast, not rushed, just done. And in that moment, I knew. It wasn't just that he walked in at the worst possible time. It was that I had already made too many decisions leading up to it. And this was just where it all finally caught up to me. The door closing behind him later that night sounded just like it had earlier. Final. And this time, there was no one left to walk back in.